Welcome to the Writing Gals, four sweet romance authors talking about writing as we stay up late. Tonight we are excited to have Rebecca Road with us as our special guest. She is a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling author. Her published fiction includes the Numbers Game trilogy and the Ember in Space series, as well as various short fiction projects. Rebecca also writes inspirational nonfiction and dabbles in freelance journalism. And if you want to learn more about Rebecca, you can visit her website at authorrebeccaroad.com. And hi, Rebecca. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, guys. This is so fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we have wanted to do one of our broadcasts on AMS Ads for a while. So I know we have a lot of viewers who are excited about today.
Awesome.
Do you want to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, how long have you been writing? How long have you been publishing? How many books do you have? Just whatever.
Sure. So I started in nonfiction, actually. I started doing journalism and fun nonfiction stuff, press releases and things. And then I just decided to write an inspirational nonfiction, and that was a lot of fun. That was traditionally published through a small press in like 2013 or something like that. But then I realized, wait a second, this is really fun. I kind of want to do what I've always wanted to do and never thought I was allowed to do, which is fiction. And once I published my first novel, I didn't look back. So I just finished my 12th book this week.
Oh,
so I have 10 of them published now, and that includes short fiction like novellas and stuff too. But I mostly write speculative, so science fiction, fantasy, and I'm totally a nerd, so that's what I write.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember last year I was reading S.K. Quinn's like self-publishing bootcamp book because I was trying to figure everything out. And I remembered seeing she had written about you and showing your covers. And I think she talked about your launch too. I'm like, that's awesome. so that is really
so great. I love her.
Yeah. So can you give us a brief explanation of what AMS ads are?
Sure. I'm happy to. I think it's just a little bit of a background. When they picked this particular class for me to teach at Storymakers, I was kind of disappointed because I think Facebook ads are a lot more fun. But fast forward a few months after I found out that I would be teaching that class, they made Facebook ads a lot harder to target. So I kind of had to focus on AMS ads. So I've kind of had to learn really quickly what worked and what didn't. So it's just a little caveat that what works for me may not work for you. It's one of those things that's just not hard and fast. So, but in general, this is true for everybody. So basically, AMS ads are, they come up on like Amazon product pages for like keyword searches, Kindle lock screens. They're basically the Amazon powerhouse. And they're not just for books. You can find them on all kinds of products. I can speak English. I promise I can speak English. But the reason that they're actually really powerful is because people are already on Amazon because they know they want to buy something. Whereas Facebook ads, they just want to hang out with their friends and see cute pictures of kittens and stuff. But on Amazon, they're ready. They have the money. They know what they want. And if you're doing sponsored product ads, for example, they type in what they want. So it's easy to target the right people. It's also, I think it's good for any budget. Whereas Facebook ads, you kind of have to have money that you're willing to lose. You don't really need like special software or anything. You don't really need to be able to come up with images. It's pretty quick and easy to set up once you have a list of keywords, and it's a lot easier to target indie authors specifically. Whereas like Facebook ads, you have to target trad pub authors and bigger ones. You can't target people who write things like you that aren't necessarily famous. So I think they're kind of the golden nugget for authors. I think they can be really powerful once you figure them out.
Yeah, I agree. I have tried both, and I use AMS more than Facebook. Last time I tried to use a Facebook ad, and they didn't want to spend my money for some reason. Like I had it up for a week, and they spent $1.22. I'm like, what? Usually, I'd love to spend my money. So I
Yeah.
ads.
I'm interested to hear though about what you mean about Facebook, because I am a Facebook ad girl. I think I like that instant like response that I get from Facebook ads instead of like AMS ads, where I just feel like they're just on, but they're not really doing anything. And so I'm interested, like, so do you do Facebook ads at all?
Yeah, I do both.
Okay.
I use them for different things. And I think most authors are better at one than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. But Facebook ads are better if you want a bigger spike. I use AMS ads all the time. They're constantly running, and I'm constantly running dozens of them at a time because they come and go. It's almost like, I think of them almost like you're throwing horses into a race. Like you want as many horses as possible because at least one of them has a bigger chance of winning if you have a bunch of them. Whereas Facebook ads, it's like you throw all your money on this one thoroughbred and you just make sure that it's ready to go, if that makes sense. It's a different mentality, and they both kind of do different things. It's really a really good like slow burn type of an ad. Whereas Facebook ads, you can lose money really quickly if you're not paying attention. So yeah, they're just different mentality, and they have different effects on your books, I've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So is that answering your question?
Yeah, I'm just interested to hear what kind of changes they've made that you feel that is making Facebook ads harder to use.
They're targeting.
Okay.
It's a little tougher since the fiasco with privacy and stuff like that, which is important. I agree that lines need to be drawn in terms of the information that people have bought and sold about them. But it does make it harder when they're pulling back and they're less concerned about making it easy for advertisers than there are protecting the customers. So we've just had to be a little more creative than we used to be about targeting.
So because of this new GDRP or whatever it is that is rolling out, that Facebook is making it less easy?
That might have an effect on it too. I haven't really noticed an effect from that yet, but like as soon as our friend Mr. Mark Z had issues with as soon as he got in trouble, did you notice the changes that they started to make? They started to cut it back so that you couldn't easily pick multiple factors in terms of targeting. Okay. So they just made it trickier for you to target like a specific genre and specific book and Kindle, or like, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It used to be I could get my Facebook ads down to like 6 cents a click pretty regularly. And now probably the best I can do is like 16 cents. So it's a big difference for me. I'm still trying to figure out how it's going to work and how it's going to affect me, but I've definitely had to rely more on AMS ads to make up the difference. So I think it's important to learn both for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. So I'm curious because I've seen on the AMS ads that they have both sponsored product ads and then product display ads. Mm-hmm. Which one do you use both, or which one do you use more of? Which one is there a favorite one that you have?
That's a good question. So this is another reason why AMS ads are frustrating, because it's not the same for everybody. I can tell you what I do, but it's not necessarily going to work for everybody. That's why it's important to test. So I constantly am testing this, and still over the past few months, I have gotten more traction from sponsored product ads, but I'm hearing more and more people say that those are kind of getting saturated and they're actually having more success with product display ads. And I kind of gave up on product display interest ads for a little while because they weren't doing anything for me. And I talked to an author at Storymakers who said that's all she uses practically, and that they were working really well for her. So it really just is up to the author, the audience, the books. I think it's important to try all of them, multiple ads in all of them, and then just give it some time and see what your audience responds to.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because I did try the product display ad like once, and I'd set my like the total goal for them to spend was like $100. I don't think they spent anything, so yeah. I need to try that again and see if I can figure that out.
Those ones are hard. It's hard to get them to spend your money, and sometimes they don't even turn on, which is so crazy to me.
Why? Yeah, that must be why.
I'm not sure why. I would love to go to their office and say, okay, look, why are you making us waste all this time creating ads that aren't even going to turn on? But that's why we develop a bunch of ads, because at least some of them hopefully will take off.
Yeah. So I'm really curious, like on your books, do you have multiple ads going for each book at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
And like how many ads do you have going for each book?
For each book?
Yeah.
So I only have 2 series, trilogies, and I've tested this and I've found that it's more effective to market the first book in the series, because you guys all write romance, right? So you don't necessarily like have to read the books in order.
Yeah.
I've heard that that's more. With mine, you absolutely have to read them in order. So it doesn't make sense for me to try and get people to buy book 3. And plus book 1 is always 99 cents. So it's more likely to catch attention. So I only market the first book. So I only have at any given time 2 or 3 books that I'm marketing, but I have so many different, lists of keywords that I'm testing and products that I'm testing that I can have 10 at a time on each book.
Oh, okay.
So if
I'm testing, or a different ad copy that I'm testing.
So for like me, I have a series, but they're all completely standalone. So would you suggest somebody who has completely standalone to be able to run ads on each book? Or, I mean, obviously if you have, like you said, a series where it goes one after the other, would you suggest, like, obviously you would do the first book and not like the third book, but like, what do you say for someone like me who has them just completely standalone?
So the benefit of that is that, yeah, it totally makes sense for you to market other books. I've talked to Lindsay Armstrong about this. You guys know who she is, right? And she's like, yeah, they can start anywhere in my series and they can read the most recent book or the one I published 4 years ago, and it's still going to make sense. They all reference other characters in each book, but it doesn't matter what order you read them in. So you can totally run ads on each of those books. The hard part is going to be, you need to know your read through so that you know what your budget is. Because I feel like I can spend a little bit more than some people would on marketing my first book. I'm willing to take a little bit more of a loss because I know that read through will make that up. So if you know what your read through is from book to book, that'll give you an idea of how much you can spend on each one. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how do you find out your read through? Is that just by noticing your ranks, or just like how exactly?
There's a formula. You can, I was telling you ladies, I'm happy to send you guys the PowerPoint if you want. You can email me. I can send you the PowerPoint and it has the little formula in there. Or if you have ever read Brian Meek's book, it's got the formula in there. Or you can probably even find the formula online. They even have like Excel spreadsheets that you just pop it on in there, all the data, and it'll come up with everything for you, which is always nice when they do the work for you. So it's all over. It's easy to find.
Okay, I'm gonna have to try that out because I had no idea, obviously.
What does the formula take into account?
Ooh, that's a good question. So that gets us into what the data statistics are. Here, let me pull up the list really quick on my PowerPoint because that's kind of important to know in terms of ROI.
Do you mind us putting this up on our Facebook group page?
Not at all. I think that would be helpful, actually.
Okay. And then yes. I don't think you're a member, but you should join. And then people can ask you questions if you want. You don't have to. No pressure. Well, everyone's watching you.
Just bring everything on you.
Nobody at all.
Now you can't say no.
Okay, so all right, so we've got clicks, impressions. You guys know what those are. Basically, how many times your ad is served. You've got click-through rate, so that's basically clicks divided by impressions. Your conversion percentage is basically like your sales divided by the number of clicks. ROI is basically the revenue that you've made minus the cost. That's very basic. And you have to be careful with that. So they make it seem like your ads are doing better than they are. So they have something that's called an ACOS score. We talked about this. Basically, they're saying, okay, well, this looks like this sale was connected to your book, and this sale was, and this sale was. The problem was that can be print sales. So if you have a $15 book, they're saying, look, you made $15, but you aren't making $15 off of that book. You're really maybe only making $2 on that book. So it's making your number completely wacko. And it doesn't include KU page reads. So if you have a book in KU, you have no idea who's reading your book. It may not look like it's doing well, but it's actually doing great. So you have to be super careful what data you're using. Yeah. And that's why I think it might be a good idea for you guys to read the PowerPoint so that you know how to figure that out.
Yes, definitely.
I don't remember you using, did you just not get to that at Storymakers? Or, because I'm like, I took your class, but I felt like it was like geared towards people just asking how to even set up Amazon ads, and you kept being like, let's steer it back to that.
It was hard. I had a lot of questions and they were all over the board, so we kind of sped through a lot of stuff. So if you want details, you probably want to read the PowerPoint. And if you've ever read, this is a side thing, but Brian Meek's book on Amazon ads I still recommend it. I still think it's helpful if you want someone to hold your hand and kind of walk you through it. I will say that in terms of how-to books, it's a little bit frustrating if you're expecting it to be someone telling you what to do all the time, because he basically says, okay, it's almost like a case study more than it is a how-to book, if that makes sense. So he's a numbers guy and he throws in a ton of numbers and he's like, okay, I did this and I did that and I did this and here's the results. But he doesn't take it a step further necessarily and say, okay, what that means for you is this and this and this. So it's kind of frustrating to read. So you're welcome to read it. It is helpful, but I kind of gleaned things from there and then tested it against my own experience, and some of it held true and some of it didn't. Okay. So that's also so helpful, is that nothing's entirely 100% true for everybody. It's really just about testing. And that's one thing that I appreciate that he kept saying over and over again, is you've got to figure out what works for you, because it's not necessarily what works for him. What works for him doesn't necessarily work for me. A lot of the stuff didn't. So testing, it's important.
Yes, very true, especially for indie authors. We test everything.
Yeah.
So I am curious about where you find your keywords. Do you use your own, or do you use the ones that Amazon suggests because I know you can choose, have them tell you some.
So they have automated keywords and they have manual keywords. I've tried the automated ones. Have you guys tried them before?
No, I have. I've looked at them and like, oh, those don't sound right. So I'll make it.
They're words like book, and they aren't very specific, and I think they give mostly the same ones to everybody. So I've tried them. They didn't really work.
Okay.
So I pretty much always do my own. Excuse me. They're a lot more effective, personally speaking. But you asked where I get my keywords. Mm-hmm. Basically, okay, so there's a few places, and I hope I don't overwhelm you with this list, but this is also on the PowerPoint if you want it. Yeah. So I've tried KDP Rocket. I've found that those keywords are not great, actually. I was kind of disappointed because it's so easy and fast, and it's actually not that expensive, but at least for my genre, they weren't very effective when compared to the ones that I came up with. So I think it's still worth the time to try and find your own. It doesn't take necessarily a long time to find them on your own. It's really not even worth looking other places, because also bots are honestly your biggest tool when it comes to finding keywords. So basically, if you go to the book that you're going to target, and then you go down to the also bots list, you can drill down into each of those and get easily 100 other books and authors. And then go on to the next one. You'll easily have, 1,000, 2,000 really, really fast if you're just focusing on also bots. You can also go on your Amazon author page And if you scroll down a little bit and look to the left, there's a big list of authors that you have in common. You can click on those. You can click on each of their books. You can drill down their also bots. So that's another 1,000 or 2 right there. I mean, honestly, you could spend a lot of time with all of those to make a huge thousands upon thousands of keywords lists if you wanted to. Also, Goodreads lists are good. Listopia. Mark Dawson recommends yassive.com. Have you guys ever tried that? It's basically like a visual of Amazon. So instead of having a list of also bots with their like all neat and tidy in a row, it's almost like a chart, and yours is in the middle, your book is in the middle, and then it's got all these other ones branched off. If you're a visual person, it's kind of cool to see. So you can see the closer they are to your book, the more the connection is. So that's cool, and it's free. It's yassiv.com.
Okay, cool.
Some people recommend Google AdWords. It's okay for me. I haven't used them in a while because they weren't incredibly helpful. But if you find a place that has really good keywords, you can use a data scraper, which I didn't know what that was till a few months ago. It's basically,
I have no idea what that is.
because Amazon requires that you have everything formatted just so. If you have a big list of stuff, it needs to not have formatting in it. It needs to be, a certain way. And you can't, unless you're willing to just write them down one by one, necessarily go on Goodreads and take all that information easily and put it in a spreadsheet, unless you have a data scraper. So if you use something like import.io, it can actually take all the data for you and put it into a spreadsheet so that you can just clean it up really quick and then copy and paste it into your Amazon ads. It'll save you hours and hours, and it's free. So there's really no reason not to learn to use them.
Oh,
They're
that's
awesome.
cool. Because I've been like typing in my keywords one by one. I thought that's what you had to do. So you can you can import a spreadsheet? Is that what you said somehow? Or
it's like giant fingers. It takes all the data on the page and just crams it into a little spreadsheet for you. So it's kind of cool. I know, right? Modern technology saves so much time.
I'm like, how do people get thousands of words? It's taking me like forever to get 50. So.
Yeah, that one works pretty well, and it's worth playing with. If you're not a huge technological person, it's fine to type it into and handwrite or whatever you need to do. It's fine. It just takes longer. It takes you away from writing. But there's also one thing that I talked about at the class that a lot of people hadn't heard of, which is not such a secret anymore because it's been going around, but I got it from Brian Cohen. I feel like I should give him a hat tip because it's awesome that he shared this. But so basically you go to Amazon.com, and then where you would normally type in an author name or a book, you go to the drop down where it has Kindle Store and then search, and then you can type in like Kindle Unlimited eligible, or you can even skip it if you don't want KU books and you want to go wide. And then you type in Kindle ebooks or just ebooks. I promise it'll make sense. Hang on with me. And then you can select your genre. So if you want like science fiction, or if you want romance, or if you want like stepbrother romance, or I don't know what you guys write.
That sounds good.
That's not what you write. And then you just kind of drill down as specific as you want to be in your ads. And then you scroll down, and to the left, there's this little magical golden sparkly thing that hardly anybody sees, and it's amazing. So basically, it has some authors like listed there, just a few, and then there's a little see more button in blue, and if you click that, it'll come up with all the authors that write in that genre. So you can have easily hundreds or thousands of keywords right there that are very targeted to your genre. It's so incredibly helpful. So what I do is I will, you can just data scrape it, or you can copy and paste and then clean it up in Excel really fast. So my most recent ads were space fantasy, because that's what my most recent series is. So you can just go into like space fantasy, or you can do galactic empire, or you can do romance, or whatever it is, and then go to all the authors, and then you can test them all. Like I'll test them all by A, B, C, D, and then you can go into each of those authors, and then you can drill down into their also bots. So each author can almost be like a route in itself of its own ad. So it can take you months and months to go through that one list if you have one specific genre. So it's pretty cool. It's a great tip and it's free and it's on Amazon for anyone to use, but hardly anybody knows it's there.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you talk about that in your PowerPoint also?
Yes.
Okay.
I call it my super secret keyword hack, I think is what it says, even though it's not secret and it doesn't have to be. I don't own the rights to that secret. It's just
it was a secret to me. I had no idea. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I use it after taking your class.
Oh, you do? Isn't it cool?
So, okay, I've been doing ads where it's just the author, but you're saying, do you actually add the author's book titles as well to the keywords?
You can. So if you use author names, which I've found to be a little more effective than book names, you're also getting all of their books, but you can't necessarily pick and choose which books. Like if an author writes science fiction and fantasy, you're going to be on both of theirs. So if you want to be more targeted, you can also use books. So I do both. Okay. But author names are if you want to be seen in more places, and if you know what they write, then it's pretty effective.
Would you suggest that you have more ads with different copies or more ads with more keywords? So like testing different ad copy, or what would you suggest? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I test both, but I usually test ad copy first until I know kind of what I want to say and what's responding well, and then I'll test keywords because it takes a lot longer to do the keywords than it does the ad copy. There's only so many different variations I can say and however many characters they give me.
Right. So. Okay, I have another question. So, you know, when you do that, you follow the pathways and you can go different ways. You could go like clean and wholesome, or you could do Christian inspirational romance because we're romance writers, right? And so would you suggest doing an ad just with those authors and then do another ad with like the clean and wholesome authors and then do another, you know what I'm saying? Or would you just combining them all? Because sometimes authors show up on the same, like in 3 different pathways, one author will show up on all 3. So would you suggest doing just separate ads for each pathway or combining them all and having more keywords for one ad?
That's a good question. I've tested both ways. I was talking to somebody recently, I can't remember who it was, but she was saying she thinks that Amazon rewards those who keep similar keywords together. I'm not sure if that's true. But I have giant lists that I throw together, but I'll say this is list 2 and 4 or whatever in my title, so I know what list it is specifically. And then I'll throw them all in together and see what does well, and then I'll move it on. It's almost like a sports bracket for me. Like the ones that do well, I'll move it on to a new ad, and then I'll increase the bid on those, and then lump them all together. But you can do it either way. It really just depends on your books and what you want to do and what works for you.
Because I'm just trying to figure out how you get multiple, because I remember you saying in the class, it's easier to get Amazon to spend $1 on 10 ads than Amazon to spend $10 on 1 ad. So I'm just trying to figure out how you come up with 10 ads if you just lump all the keywords into one ad copy. You know what I'm saying? So then I'm like, how are you getting 10 ads from that? Are you just changing the ad copy? I mean, that makes sense.
I'm testing everything. So I test different bids. Like I'll have my 15 cents bids and then I'll have my 25-cent bids and I'll test them against each other or whatever. There's so many things that you can test. It's actually surprisingly easy to come up with 10 different ads for a book.
Okay. So it's not necessarily 10 different ads or 10 different keywords. You're just coming up with 10 different things for the same keywords.
It can be both.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's everything.
I do everything. It's ridiculous. I'll be like, okay, I need 3 more ads till I can be done. What should I change? Sure, I'll just change that. I'm not an analytical person at all. I promise. I'm not a numbers person. So I just kind of do, and I just kind of test things against each other. Okay, I'll see if this works better or this works better and see what happens. It's almost like a game. Throw the horse in the ring, see what happens.
Cool. So I'm curious, how do you decide like if an ad is performing well enough? Like what are there certain, like you there's the ACOS and the bid price or whatever. So what do you use to know if you want to keep that ad going or shut it down or cut off certain keywords or just like
Yeah, that's a
How do
good question.
you decide what is good? Because like I have some ads where the ACOS is like 40%, and then others where they're like 300%. Like, I like the 40% better, but is like, since I don't know about the Kindle Unlimited downloads, I'm like, well, maybe the other one's okay too. I just, how do you know? Or can you know?
Yeah, you can, but it's not easy. So what I recommend doing, which is not what most people want to hear, is you need to know how it's performing over time. Because the ads kind of are like animals. They are alive and then they're dead. They just kind of, you don't know how long that period is going to be, but you know, basically, if you're keeping track of how many impressions and how many clicks you've had and how many sales you've had in a day over a period of time, you can see trends. And if it's increasing, that's great. It's very much alive. If it's starting to decline, you know it's dying.
Okay.
We probably shouldn't use that word. That sounds terrible, but that's kind of what happens. So if it's dying, then usually at that point, I'm going to start a new ad.
Okay.
So that one is running by the time this one dies. But you can also download a report if you don't want to keep a spreadsheet, if you're not a spreadsheet person. I hate spreadsheets, but I still force myself to use them because I don't know that I could see otherwise.
Okay.
But basically, as a general rule of thumb, I usually say 1 click per 200, maybe even up to 500 impressions is probably fine. If you aren't getting impressions, it probably means that your bids might be a little low, or maybe if you're doing a product display ad, it just hasn't turned on yet. It takes a long time for those to turn on. It can be 2 weeks up to 6 weeks. It really depends. Yeah, I know, right? It's kind of ridiculous.
Like the one I tried was only up for a week, so that's why I got nothing.
Yeah, I have never seen one turn on before like a week and a half. It's kind of crazy. I don't know what's going on over there, but whatever. They don't listen.
I wasn't getting any impressions on my ad until I heard Victorine say, "Oh yeah, I'm bidding like 50 cents per ad," and I'm like, "Oh well, that's why Victorine is winning them all." So I was like, "Now I gotta up my price because she's bidding me up like crazy."
She's taking all the cookies. She's having a big sale. Yeah, but basically, yeah, that's impressions. If you're getting like one buy every 20 to 50 clicks or so, it's probably doing okay. If you're getting impressions but you're not getting clicks, it's probably because either your targeting is off, or your cover maybe isn't on target, or maybe your ad copy just isn't as gripping as it could be. So there's a few factors there that you could kind of tweak and see if you can improve it. And if you're getting both impressions and clicks, but you're not getting sales, it probably means that you need to optimize your product page, because there's some kind of a disconnect there when they get to your product page. It sounds like it's showing to the right people, they're clicking, but they're not getting what they're expecting to see. Or maybe the price of the book is too high. I don't know. I haven't found Amazon readers to be incredibly price sensitive. If it's priced under $4 or $5, they're usually okay with it. If it's over $5, then they're a little grumpy, in my experience anyway.
So you'd said that like when an ad dies that you'll start a new ad. Like what do you change about the new ad? Do you change the ad copy or the keywords, or like how do you make a live one?
It depends. Yeah, I'll look at what I just said. Like if I had a lot of impressions, or if I had a lot of clicks, and if I had a lot of buys, and I'll just kind of analyze it and say, okay, this was fine, this was fine, this was a little off, so what can I change this time? Or I might take different keywords and say, okay, so I'm going to take all the best keywords out of that and I'm going to improve it. Or if it was a great ad and it was just doing awesome, I'm going to do the exact same ad and see if it works the same again.
Oh, okay.
So basically, you have two options. You can copy an ad if you want, or you can start it from scratch. Copying used to work just the same, but it doesn't really anymore, at least for me, and I'm not sure why that is. But if you copy it directly, for some reason, I don't know if it's because they compete against each other or whatever, but it doesn't do quite the same as the other one does. So that's why I keep track of which list I'm using and which ad copy I'm using in the title, so I can look at it and say, okay, I used this list, so I'm going to throw that in there, and I use this ad copy, I'll throw it in there, and it takes like 2 minutes to put up the new ad.
Okay.
When
Cool.
you said that you keep track, what are you keeping track of? Are you keeping track of just the overall one little number that's, you know, the bracket of numbers that go across? Or are you actually going into that particular ad and showing which like impressions have gone up or down or clicks for those specific keywords? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that would take forever.
Okay, so I'm guessing that's not what you do then.
Yeah. Yeah, I just take the big picture.
Okay.
And then if I'm going to change the keywords up, then I'll just take a quick look and be like, okay, that one did terrible. That one's getting taken off my list because it's maybe getting a ton of impressions, but 0 clicks or whatever.
Okay.
And you'll know if that happens, you're getting tens of thousands of impressions and nobody even cares about your book. That's probably not your target audience.
Okay. That is interesting. So do you like delete the words that aren't doing well from your specific ads or add keywords to the ads that are already running? Do you ever like mess with the ads once they're already going?
I used to, and I found that it didn't work.
Okay.
It's the change in mentality again. Like with Facebook ads, you totally do. You're tweaking almost every day to make sure that it's optimized. With these ads, they come and go and die and do weird things. And it's just easier to just put up a new ad. And it's actually, I believe that Amazon gives more credibility or at least more of a push to the newer ads. I think there's something to how long it's been going. And so it's really a better idea to just create a new ad with whatever change you're going to make. And that's another horse in the ring, so to speak, anyway. So your chances are better of having one of them do really well.
Okay. I had a question and then it just like left my brain. Do you like, so that's the same with like increasing the bid on the ad, that would just be on a whole different ad?
Yeah, the only really exception to that would be like if I was saying if you're getting a bunch of impressions but not clicks, it could mean that your bids are too low. And if that's the case, just across the board, your bids are just not doing well. You can try and guess and say, okay, maybe it's not the right audience, or you can experiment and say, well, what if I increase this across the board? If I make it a little higher, if it's going to get anything. So it's worth trying. Okay. You've already made the ad. You might as well see if you can make it work. But in general, I'm just going to recreate a new one. It's just better in the long run.
I think I'm going to go like copy my ads and make new ads because I think a few of them died now after hearing this. Like one of them's been there since like October and it hasn't changed much. So I think it just died and I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Like, so that is.
It's funny when you go in and you're like, oh, this ad is still doing awesome. It's been like 6 months and it's still at 40%.
Yeah.
It's been at 40% for like 5 of those months. Wait a second, it's probably not running. Yeah, that's why the spreadsheet is important.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know because mine have been at 40% for a while. But I have seen them on other product pages. So does that mean it's still alive or what? Like
you could still get trickling. Yeah.
Okay.
You might just kind of test it and see if it's still working.
Okay.
You might even see, yeah, you just never know. It's inconsistent and that's what's frustrating. With Facebook, you kind of know that it's going to be somewhat close. With AMS ads, there's a delay in reporting, so you don't necessarily know when those clicks or sales happened. So it's very frustrating.
Yeah. So is there like because we can't see the KU download, so is there a certain ACOS that you would shut the ad off at, or do you just pay attention to how like that formula that you talked about, how that's doing?
Yeah, this is tricky. So I check and see if there are any print sales, first of all, because those throw off the data. If there aren't, then I can assume that somewhat close to 70%, if my book is in the 70% royalty range, is probably good. If it's in KU, I'll go as high as 120, 130%, especially with the first book in my long series, because I know that the read-through will be better. So I'm going to make my money back and then some, even if I go a little bit higher on the percentage. So it kind of depends on how long your series is, if you've got just one or if you've got a bunch of books, what who is kind of depends on a bunch of things. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's just how AMS ads are. They're just fun. So that is all of the questions that I had, but does anyone else have any questions, or do you have anything else that you like think we should know?
I have a question.
Okay.
So once you started ads, how, like, were you just kind of going steady income wise, and then you saw, like, how much of an increase or how much of a help and boost has AMS ads done for you? This is kind of your prove to us that we should listen to you moment.
Oh, you shouldn't listen to me. Nobody should do that.
Oh man.
Yeah, don't do it. I'm just kidding. No, I think everyone should. I started doing AMS ads and Facebook ads at the same time, and I was a lot better at Facebook ads at first, and lately AMS ads have been my bread and butter. But when I started doing ads in general, I went from a part-time income to a full-time income within a couple months. It made a huge difference for me. So I've actually had moments like before I did the Storymakers class, I wanted to start from scratch so that I could have some good examples of, you know, up-to-date ads or whatever. So I halted all those ads and I kind of started from scratch. And right away, within a day, I saw a difference in sales rank and sales. So I knew that they were working and that they were boosting. And I did that again like 2 weeks ago just to see, because I had a couple ads that I wasn't sure that they were effective. I saw an immediate change. So that's another good way. If you want to know if it's working, you can turn them all off and see, or at least pause them. Don't delete them, but pause them.
How much do you release? Like, how constant do you release a book?
Every 3 months. I've been doing pre-orders, so that's as long as Amazon will let me go.
Okay.
No longer if I could. But I used to be like every 6 months. I think that's more what I'm comfortable with, you know, being a mom and kids and stuff. And my husband took a job in real estate, so he's home a lot more. So that gives me more writing time. So that's the only reason I've been able to write him so fast. I write science fiction, so it's like
they're longer too.
90K words. It takes a long time. It takes a long time to edit something like that, and they're very intricate. I write a lot of I use thriller pacing, so I've got a lot of reveals and twists and stuff. It takes a long time.
Yeah. So, but it's good to hear that you can, if you can't release on a rapid release schedule, because every time I release a book, I'm like, I gotta write it faster. I gotta write it faster. So, but it's good to know that you can.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there are people writing a book a week out there, and I'm like, my brain would explode. Even if I wrote shorter books, I could not do that. Emotionally, I just couldn't handle it. So this works so perfectly for me. It's keeping my ranking low, and it's keeping everything going. And I've got the slow burn in the background while I'm writing. So I'm not worrying about these huge spikes and dips every time I release. It's so nice.
Right. And that's what, I mean, they tell you to write fast so you get more of a backlist. But if you're not advertising your backlist doesn't do anything for you. I mean, sort of, but like I have written a billionaire series, and now I'm moving on to a fake marriage series. When I release a fake marriage book, it bumps those books up, but not necessarily my billionaire books up. So it'd be nice to be able to have something consistently going on those to keep those high. And then while I'm releasing on these ones, and that's naturally just boosting because I release one. But
yeah, and
that's good to know.
It sounds like you're doing things the smart way too. I think bundling is also really effective when you're doing ads, because it seems like if you have it maybe $1 less for 3 books than it would be to buy all 3 books separately, they're like, ooh, I'm going to save $1, even though it's $1, you know, why do you even care? But they do. They totally look for those deals. So if you give them any excuse whatsoever to buy the higher priced item that has more stuff in it, they're going to jump on that.
Awesome. We had a great question off the YouTube channel on that. She said, if you have a series and do you advertise both book 1 and the box set?
I do. Yeah. The thing is, you get a little tricky when you have, so if you have a 3D box set image on Amazon, they won't let you do a product display ad. that shows on like Kindle lock screens. And the reason is because they have a template that they toss your book cover into, and that won't work in their template. So as long as you're okay with that trade-off, if you want to do sponsored product ads, you can still do it on box sets and it works fine. And you can also not worry as much about the percentage because you're making more off of those than you would be on a single book. So you can afford to go a little bit higher with your ACoS percentage, which is nice.
Yes, perfect. We have a few more questions from the YouTube channel if you guys are ready for me to ask them. Someone else asked, how often do you check a new ad on average? Sorry, how often do you create a new ad on average for one book?
I try and create a few a week. It doesn't always happen, but some are easier to create than others. Product display interest ads are super fast to create. You can do it in a minute because you're just clicking categories. So you can create 10 of those in 5 minutes if you want to.
Awesome.
Sponsored product ads take a little bit longer, and so do product display product ads. If you don't know exactly what it is you're looking for, it can take a little while. So that's about all the time I'm willing to give this, because I'm also doing Facebook ads and I'm trying to write too, and I have kids. So that's about all life will let me do. But I think that's sufficient. I know people who will create multiple ads a day, but they have more books than I do. So if you have a ton of books, it might be worth putting the extra time in.
Perfect.
And I would say too that Amazon can get picky about the words that you use. I have a personal assistant who's doing my Amazon ads now, and she's trying everything because that's what Michael Meeks, what's his name? Meeks? Brian Meeks, yeah. That's what he said, try everything. And like they don't like if you have lots of capitalized words, and they don't like it if you say bestseller, and they don't like it if you have exclamation points. So you might do an ad and they might kick you off. So I could see why having multiple ads with different ad copy when you're just starting out is smart, because you could wait a day or two for Amazon to approve it just to find out it got rejected. And so then you have to start all over again.
Yeah.
So, and if they do reject you, don't get depressed, because they're not rejecting you. And they tell you why. And so you can just go back and fix it. Or like you said, take a screenshot of somebody who's doing it and say, well, you said you did it for them. You do it for me.
It worked for me, but honestly, it probably took me 10 minutes to write that. And then I kept checking my email, and I probably spent 20 minutes on that stupid ad that I could have just created a new one and saved the time. But it was a vendetta for me. I was like, if she can do it, I can do it too. But yeah, sometimes it depends who you get. That's another thing. They're so inconsistent. You just never know. So try whatever it is you want to try and see. And if they decide they don't like it, then they'll tell you.
I think that's a good point though, because I've made like 6 ads total. And so to make at least 1 ad a week, that would help me, I'm sure. So that's good to know there, because I haven't even thought about that.
Yeah, that's good. All right, we have another question. How do you figure out how much to spend on an ad when you're not making a lot per month? She said, I make enough to cover my expenses, but I don't have much of a marketing budget.
That's a good question. That's where I started out too. I was like, okay, I have $10 this month to spend on advertising. What do I do with it? With Facebook, I mean, they'll spend your $10 in a couple hours if you let them. So you really have to know what you're doing. But with AMS ads, it's kind of hard to spend $10 on AMS ads. So if you're worried about losing a bunch of money, you can set everything super low. You can set sponsored product ads at 6 cents if you want. I mean, it won't like you, but you can. And you can have a daily cap of whatever. You can set a campaign budget of whatever you feel like you can spend, and just start from there. And then gradually increase your ad spend as you start to make money and invest that back into ads. I think that's a smart way to do it. If you're not sure where you want to start with one of each. Start with a sponsored product ad, start with a product display product ad, start with a product interest ad. And if you can, do multiple ones of the product display, because you don't know if they'll turn on or not. And then just wait and see what floats your boat. What does
I would say though, I did a product display ad, and it was like my first time ever. So I set my bid really high, like at 64 cents, and they spent it in a night. I couldn't believe $100 in a night. I like went to bed and I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, how did it spend through all my money? And this is when I wasn't making very much money. So I had to go to my husband and be like, I just lost us $100 and I have no idea how that happened. And I got on the phone with Amazon and I was like trying to chew them out. Oh no, I did not get a return for that $100. It was like,
oh, no.
I couldn't believe it. So make sure that if you're going to put $100 on there, then make sure you can spend that $100, because as much as we say, oh, they won't spend your money, man, they spent my money and it was fast. Like I was like, holy cow.
Make sure that your bids are super, super low. They will slide you into slots, and it won't be probably very many slots that they slide you into, but hopefully you'll get a few at least. But yeah, use money that you feel comfortable spending. If it's $10, use $10 for sure. In product display ads, they want you to have $100 to spend up front. So that's important to know. The first time I ever did a product display ads, it was right after they opened. They were brand new. It was like 2 years ago or something like that. There was nothing. I was like, oh, they're going to spend my $100. Nothing at all. Hardly any impressions. It was a total waste of time. And I was like, did they spend my $100? But they didn't. I was freaking out thinking that they had, but it was just a waste of time more than anything. But yeah, be super careful about your bids being low at first, because you want to test before you start increasing that bid. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And make sure you use the decimal point. That's another point. I've talked to so many authors who are like, I had a $40 bid. I didn't realize I needed the decimal point in there. Yes, you need the decimal point in there. Don't forget that. It needs to be 0.40, not 40.00. Important point if you don't want to spend a bunch of money.
Scary. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they're happy to take your money if you have high bids.
Wow. Well, that's all our questions from the YouTube channel. Does anybody else have anything?
I would say a point on box sets. This is kind of has to do with Amazon ads, but if you have a series that's finished, put it in a box set and throw it up there as well. I've been amazed with how much of my box set I'm actually selling, opposed to, or just in KU reads too, and someone picks it up, they're going to read through all your books. So there's other streams of revenue that you can get than just having one book. And people, like she said, they like a bargain. So if they can say, oh, I could buy each book for $14.95, or I could buy the box set for $9.99, people are going to grab the box set, I think. So find different ways to make that money. And then you can advertise both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone like me who has at least like 85 to 90% of their income coming from KU, am I just completely handicapped with knowing whether, because I have never done an AMS ad. And so this would be a new, world for me to dip into. Would I be handicapped in knowing whether or not they're effective?
It's harder for you, but the good thing about Amazon is if you know what your ranking typically is on a book, and if you're not running any other ads, you can kind of tell by your ranking a little bit how many borrows and how many sales you're getting. If your ranking jumps, you're like, hey, the ad's doing great. If you pause it and the ranking dips, then you can tell there's something going on there, even if you don't know specifically what it is. And if that only works though if you're not doing anything else to advertise it. But yeah, you'll want to keep an eye on a lot of those factors that we mentioned. Like if you have a series, if you know what the read through is, if you know what your typical numbers are and how much they increase, how many sales you've increased in that time period versus the time period before, you can kind of keep an eye on that and get a general idea. Does that help?
All a guessing game.
I know. Don't you hate that?
Yes.
So if someone was to launch, like, we talk long term. If someone's like, okay, well, I'm launching a book, my first book next week, what would be your greatest advice you could give them in terms of having what to line up in terms of marketing?
Good question. I would start immediately doing AMS ads. Start to try and figure out which books your book has in common, because you're going to use that in multiple places. Start your ads going, because it might take a little while for those to take effect. And then I actually, when I'm launching a book, I also use Facebook ads and BookBub ads. I don't know if you guys have used those. CPC ads and CPM. I don't use them any other time because BookBub ads can get kind of pricey, and they die really fast in terms of our poor animal metaphor. Like it'll last a couple days and then you get ad fatigue really quick. So you just have to be really careful knowing how much to spend at each place and for how long, and keep an eye on how your books are doing in each place. But yeah, I'll have all 3 running the week of a release. Make sure that everybody knows. I mean, that's for a book 1 or a book 2. If it's later books in a series, people aren't necessarily going to click on book 3, 4, 5 on BookBub. They don't care. They want book 1. So it's kind of a waste of time. So I'll advertise book 1 if I have book 4 coming out or whatever.
That's good to know. I haven't tried BookBub, so I need to look into that.
And your majority that you write is YA, correct?
Yes. My Ember in Space series, she's 19 and she turns 20. And I did that on purpose because I wanted my YA readers to feel comfortable reading it, but also adults feel comfortable reading it. I wanted to widen my audience a little bit. But my voice is definitely YA because that's what I read. So I think it's the most fun. It's easier to get away with clean fiction in science fiction if you write YA, I think. When you write adult, they're expecting things that I don't want to put in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we're all romance authors right here, so there's lots of expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I write YA too, so yay, YA,
yeah, oh yeah. And I have a YA fantasy series that I've written, so definitely a different animal to chew when you're doing YA compared to adult, but you get away with a lot more stuff in YA, I think. And
wow, the animals tonight are dying and being chewed up and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, poor animals.
Cool. Well, does anyone have any more questions or anything you'd like to add to this before we say goodbye for the night? No?
Nope. I personally am trying to decide whether I'm brave enough to try this. So this was very helpful for me to just kind of hear. I had some questions written down, and then they just kept getting answered. So that was really good. But we'll see. Maybe I'll do some kind of update on our Facebook page and tell you if I got brave enough to try the AMS ad campaign.
You're going to have all this excitement built up, Michelle, then you're going to put your ad up and you're going to realize how slow AMS takes. And it's going to be like a week when you're like, okay, now I finally get a sale because AMS has done all its weird stuff and now it's working. You're going to be like, that's kind of a letdown.
I'm just worried that I don't have the time. I'm worried about the time factor, of learning it and, trying everything. And it sounds like a lot of time commitment that I'm wondering. I mean, it's obviously effective for Rebecca as far as bringing in revenue. It always goes back to that balance of, is the time going to bring, return on investment compared to what I would spend writing? So
honestly, I don't use my writing time to do my ads. I use my Netflix time to do my ads. So when my brain is dead, I can do ads all night long, and it doesn't. That's the time that I wouldn't be doing anything important anyway. That's what works for me.
So brain dead time for the ad work. That works. Because I already use my Netflix time for writing. So, but there are times when my brain just shuts down and I can't do anything anymore. So maybe that's when I'll try it. When I'm not very, very bright. That sounds like a good.
Don't forget the decimal point.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, don't be too brain dead.
But I don't think Rebecca talked about her books at all. So why don't you tell us what you write? I think we just kind of skipped over that part. I mean, you graciously gave us an hour of your time. So use this to self-promote yourself. Let's get some books read from the Writing Gals group of people. So take it away.
Oh, you guys are nice. I can tell you, well, I've got one next to me. So this is my newest series, Flicker. book 2 just came out a few months ago. It's called Flare, and then the next one is Flame. That one is on pre-order. That one's about a gypsy who gets kidnapped by the Empire and used as their deadliest military weapon. She's trying to take down the Empire before she loses herself. So it's an interesting genre mashup. And then I have a dystopian series called the Numbers Game series. And that one's about a girl in a world where everyone wears a number. It tells everyone what you're worth to society, kind of, and she gets the wrong number, but no one believes her that it's wrong. So in order to prove herself, she takes this military mission and she meets a guy, and then she finds out this big conspiracy and blows it wide open. And so it's kind of a thriller in the YA genre. That one was fun to write.
Those sound awesome. I got cold chills as you were talking about that. I was like, oh, this sounds really good.
I was gonna say this sounds. We took Jennifer Nielsen's class, right? About writing the next. What is it?
Breakout novel.
Yes, thank you. The breakout novel. So now me and Victorine came away from that. We're like, we have to write a YA book. Like, hello. So hearing this stuff, I'm like, this is so exciting. Like, romance is great, but this is what gets your heart pumping. You know, this is the mystery and the suspense and all this other stuff going on. It makes it super exciting to write. But it's hard to balance that because when you're like, well, clean contemporary romance makes me so much money. How do I not focus on that and focus on YA? But then you use
YA is hard to market and to write. There's a lot of YA out there. So I don't know. I keep telling people that I'm going to write romance. I've written one romance. It's a novella. It was in one of those I Write Network anthologies like a couple years ago. And that was so hard for me to write. I was like, oh, romance, it's going to be easy. No world building, no weird names to come up with in history of the world. No, it was so hard to write a romance where no one was dying or there was no weapons.
Or a bad guy.
The conflict becomes the emotion. And it's hard to not make that come across as cheesy and over like drawn and things like that. If you want to write romance, Victorine has a how-to book that you could get if she walks you through her.
It's definitely a special. Every genre is so specialized that even if you read heavily in one, I think it is a whole different ballgame when you try to start writing in a new genre. But so I'm working on a fantasy series right now, and it's, in a way, it's so much easier to bring in all the conflict and all the tension because you have bad guys and political, things going on and all these other things outside of the inner world of your two main protagonists. So it's fun and exciting and a little bit easier in some ways to create tension and conflict, because in romance we're always trying to stuff more back in there without it being artificial. So it's fun. But
well, thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca. It was awesome to learn more about AMS Ads, and I'm probably going to get off of this and go add a couple more to revive the ones that died. But also, I would like to just give a shout out to everyone watching this. Go check out Rebecca's books. We will put the link to her, what was it called? The PowerPoint. Sorry, my brain is dead. It is late. To the PowerPoint on our Facebook group. I will try to remember to put it on this video when I upload it to our Reel page. And make sure to check out Rebecca's books also. So thank you for staying up late with us. And we will talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yep. Bye.